Evening. My name's Steve Duffin. I'm a front-end developer at Turnkey. And tonight I'm going to take you on a bit of a journey. Yeah. Put your hands up if you've seen 2001: A Space Odyssey. Okay, loads. Brilliant. This is going to work really well. It's a classic film, right? I mean, it might try the patience of a modern audience, but there's some fantastic ideas in there, some really, really cool scenes. Even if you haven't seen the movie, you might be aware of the opening section. It's very famous. It starts with two tribes of apes fighting over a water source. Okay? And then one day, this mysterious black rectangle appears. Where did it come from? We don't know. An alien race? A higher intelligence? The apes are really curious. And the ones that touch it get inspired. They start getting ideas. And they discover tools. This is early man, okay? And the tools that get inspired and discover these equipments chase off the less advantaged apes, and they claim the water source for their own. Then we see them chasing down animals, hunting, feasting on their remains. It's pretty brutal, but this is the evolution of man and womankind. These apes are propelled into a new dawn. It's very exciting. Now, if you haven't seen the film, minor spoiler, humans throughout the film encounter these giant magical rectangles, these monoliths. And every time they do, they too get inspired. It takes them to a higher plane of discovery. Now, these monoliths, these black rectangles, do they remind you of anything? Yeah? It's good that, isn't it? I didn't do that. I just ripped that off offline. I don't think it's a coincidence. The film itself, at the very start, begins with a black rectangle. I know that's a square. I thought it was going to be widescreen. But imagine that's a rectangle for the purposes of this. Okay. And this is on for like 3 minutes. There's nothing on the screen. But we hear the orchestra building up. Very dramatic. But, what's going on? Well, I reckon the cinema screen or the TV screen is a monolith itself. Okay, rectangle, this giant black rectangle, we're asked to bask in its majesty. The screen is going to take us to a higher place. We're going to go on a voyage of discovery. For Kubrick, the film's director, the screen is the most powerful medium. It's the most potent method of expression and human communication. At least it was for him. I kind of agree. Tonight, I want us to think about screens like that. Whether that be cinema screens, TV screens, mobile phone screens. Why do mobiles, these rectangles, why do they hold such power over us? Now, as far back as we can tell, humankind has had symbols. We would decorate our body with tribal art to identify ourselves as belonging to a certain tribe. Now, way back in the day, there was obviously no Sky Entertainment. I didn't get paid for that plug. I'm just trying to, suck up. So there probably wasn't much in the way of entertainment. So the most exciting thing probably after a good day's hunting was to sit around and listen to someone around a campfire telling a story. So it'd be incredibly powerful. And these primitive humans would record their knowledge and stories in the form of cave paintings. We'd etch out our hunting victories on our cave walls. Now, it's been 40,000 years since the first cave paintings, but maybe in a way they were kind of precursors to posting pictures of dinner on Instagram. Right? Think about it. I've gathered this wonderful feast before me and I shall share it with the world. Stories have always been with us. Storytelling and documenting our existence is part of who we are. It defines us. It's only the form, the method that's changed over time. Quick history of rectangles. Right, big breakthrough, 1440, the invention of the printing press. Jonas Gutenberg invents movable type, and that leads to the formation of novels, periodicals, newspapers. In 1890, the invention of the motion picture camera, and we invent films, the manipulation of light and sound to deliver spectacles. 1925, the invention of the television And here we see mass adoption. Soon, every home has one. Sitcoms, documentaries, miniseries, keeping up with the Kardashians. A new grammar is invented to express ourselves and share our stories. But all these innovations have one thing in common. They're one way. The storyteller has a bigger audience, but that audience can't answer back. And of course, that all changes in 1999 with the invention of the World Wide Web, our gateway to the internet. Suddenly, we've got a two-way communication here. We've got non-linear stories being told. We can hyperlink, jump from one piece of information to another. Information on anything, accessible anywhere. It's pretty damn cool. Yeah, look at that. I've no idea what's going on. It's like the internet. So to begin with, like the internet, we kind of like used our other ideas of we put pictures up on there, we put videos of cats, we put audio clips on it. It mimicked other forms of media. But very soon, we had the so-called Web 2.0, where the web got social. It answered back. We started talking to each other. Next year, it's going to change again with the adoption of virtual reality. All the big players are getting behind this, right? You've got Facebook, Google, Microsoft, Sony. They're all putting their weight behind virtual reality. Rectangles are going to be so close to our faces that we're not even going to be able to tell they're rectangles. It's going to be truly boundless. But think about it. We're already carrying magic portals in our pockets. We've got devices, our smartphones, that are always connected. We're always available to anyone, anywhere in the world. We've got digital assistants now that can answer any question that we've got almost instantly. We can store every photo, our entire record collection, our ideas, our thoughts, in a device that never gets any heavier. Amber Case, an anthropologist, argues that we're all cyborgs now. Yeah? What's the definition of a cyborg? An organism to which exogenous compacts have been added for the purposes of adapting to new environments, which is a fancy way of saying we're all frickin' Iron Man. Yes. Right? Stick with me. So bearing in mind, right, we wear spacesuits to go outside of our atmosphere. We wear diving equipment so that we can explore the deepest recesses of the ocean. We can survive in places that we shouldn't be able to exist. But more commonly, we're carrying with us a device that helps us think and remember, that's become so essential just to get through our day. We're now part robot. Think about it. Next time you go down the stairs at night in the pitch black and you fire light from your fingertips just by loading a torch app, you're a cyborg. Damn cool. We're so fused with our devices that they're starting to shape who we are. In 1986, there was a very important paper in psychology published by Hansel Marcus and Paula Neurius. And it argued that we each have two selves. We have the self that we are now and the self that we wish to become. The possible self. The possible self drives us. It's who we daydream about. We fantasize about having the car, the looks, the clothes, the money. We look to popular media to find role models, ciphers for our ego to latch onto. With modern technology, we have the physical self, ourselves in the present, and we have the digital self. The digital self is a representation of us, an avatar that works on our behalf. People interact with this avatar. They leave messages, comment, look at our photos, see who we've been hanging out with. It's a self that we can perfect and edit. We can associate with the things that we aspire to be. It's a manifestation of that possible self. Now, managing how others see us and how we see ourselves is the chief driving factor on why we share so much online. Intentionally or not, we are building a digital history of our habits, our shopping habits, our interests, even our appearances. 48 hours of video are shared on YouTube every minute. 200 tweets are sent a day. This is correct of last month. 1.5 billion accounts are on Facebook. And each person is posting an average of 90 posts a day. I'll let that sink in. We're building the largest archive in human history. The New York Times did an investigation last year into why we share so much, the psychology behind sharing. They interviewed 2,500 heavy social media users and average users and people that barely went on over 3 weeks. And what they discovered was every time we share something online, we assume one of the following personas. We're selective when we choose a resource and we share it with someone. It's usually one-to-one, something boring like an Excel spreadsheet. We're altruists when we offer advice. We see something useful that we think a friend could benefit from. We're careerist when we're trying to progress our own goals, when we're trying to exchange ideas. We're hipsters when we become creative. We try and associate ourselves with popular media, or we want to show off how popular we are. We're connectors when we're trying to plan an event, get people together in the real world. And finally, we become boomerangs when we post something online deliberately to cause a reaction. Maybe we get validation in the fallout from it. But this study found, despite all these different reasons for sharing, the underlying truth of it, 68% of people agreed they shared stuff to define themselves to other people. Now, cultivating the digital self, the potential self, is an incredibly powerful draw and one of the main reasons that we're so addicted to our screens. But there's one other major factor that keeps us coming back and keeps us using our phones and our screens. It's dopamine. Dopamine is a chemical reaction that takes place in the brain. It serves several functions. It's associated with thinking, moving, sleeping, our mood, our attention, and getting us to seek out rewards. It creates a desire in us to achieve certain goals. And we evolved it so that we would leave our shelter. You know, we were in a nice, safe environment, but we needed the motivation to go out and explore, to innovate and put tools together, to hunt. There's more activity in the brain when we anticipate a reward than when we receive one. And that's thanks to dopamine. Our portable devices are dopamine factories. Every time we get a text, an email alert, we see that little red menace in the corner, the number ticking up. We want one more go on Candy Crush. It's dopamine in our brains. It's kicking off. And it makes us hungry for more. These jolts can sometimes get us into a loop and get us sidetracked from our tasks. Now, we might be able to be strict with ourselves and put down our devices, but what about those coming up in a world that's always on, that's hyper-connected, where a touchscreen experience is the norm? Now, every time I see my 4-year-old niece, she begs me to let me use her let her use my phone, just so she can play Hello Kitty Kitchen. Now, I'm sure there's some big fans of Hello Kitty Kitchen in here tonight, but if you're not familiar with it, it involves baking endless amounts of cupcakes, decorating them, and feeding them to a less than impressed penguin. There's no score. The penguin never looks any happier. He just keeps eating the cupcakes and you keep making them. She loves it. We'll be there all around the dinner table and she'll be addicted on her phone. And it's like, I'm thinking, what harm am I doing here? Am I really enabling her? A baby is born with all the neurons it will ever have in its brain. And the average baby brain weighs 330 grams. By the time the baby is 2 years old, that brain will weigh 999 grams. And this is the fastest growth the brain will ever go through. And the reason for that tripling in mass is the connections being formed. The neurons, the synapses are firing and connecting, and that's mostly based on early experiences. The mind is being conditioned, virtually wired. By the time that baby will reach the age of 15, the mind will have gone through a fine-tuning process where it'll have worked out what pathways to keep and what aren't worth bothering with. Dr. Dimitri Sirkis, pediatrician, shares his research on the exploration of mass media and how it affects those connections in the brain. He does an experiment with mice, just to look at the potential effects that screen time has on developing minds. Now, mice brains are very similar to that of humans, believe it or not. They're similar in the way that they mature and they condition, just on a quicker timescale. So his experiment was to take 2 sets of mice, Set A were raised with the stable mice, and they had just a nice old hut. Set B, yeah, they had a TV. They were hooked up to the Cartoon Network, and every day they would watch 3 hours of various mass media, fast-paced craziness like those guys, Powerpuff Girls. So they were deliberately overstimulated. Now, after 1 month, when the mice were considered mature, I guess the squeaking got deeper and they grew little mice tashes, they took them out into 2 different scenarios. Scenario A, they dropped the mice into what they called the open field test, which is basically a box, and they tracked their movement. Set A avoided exposing themselves. They'd run around the corners frantically, around the outside, and then they'd hide in the corners, and then every so often, they'd scamper into the middle just to check to see if there was any food there. Any guesses what Set B did? They were wild up in there. They were crazy. They spent as much time in the center as they did outside. They just didn't care. They were hyperactive, and they were taking huge risks by exposing themselves so much and so often. The second test involved placing 2 objects into the mice's cage. After a period of time, once the mice had got familiar with them, they removed one of the objects and replaced them with something less familiar. Set A spent 70% of the time they were observed exploring the new object. Set B, the hyperactive mice, didn't give a fuck. They spent the exact amount of time with the new object as the old object as to running around the outside. Like 2 Trailer Park Girls. That's a stupid joke. Sorry. I'm not going to ad-lib anymore. So this experiment really raises questions about exposing kids to mass media and just, overstimulating their tiny minds. And you've got to ask yourself, are we raising a generation of risk takers? Are we setting up these kids for poor performance in schools that lack the ability to concentrate? Dr. Sakirtris found that for every hour of fast-paced content a preschooler was exposed to, they were 10% more likely to have attention problems by the age of 7. Pretty scary stuff. Now, there's a danger here. If we're addicted, and our kids are addicted, that we're all going to be buried in our screens. We're always available to anybody, but we're at the risk of being constantly distracted. There's this social punctuation now in social context. I don't know if you find this, but sometimes a face-to-face conversation becomes a challenge as the lure of your friend's device is just too much. I was at a Jack White gig recently, and at the beginning of the gig, one of the band members came on and he made an appeal to the audience, and he said, try not to use your phone during the show. Something was about to take place in the most highest definition possible, in the most realist of 3D, reality. There was no need to look at your phone. They even hired a photographer to go around the stadium and take pictures from all the different angles, and then every night of the tour, they uploaded them and they put them out there for people to be able to download and pretend that they took the photos themselves. Pretty cool. What happened? Well, as soon as the gig started, the chap in front of me brought out his phone and spent the entire gig looking through his 3-inch screen. There was another group, when Seven Nation Army came on, they turned the phone on themselves and they spent the whole time filming their reaction to it as it was happening. They're not even looking at the gig, they're looking at a reflection of themselves. It's insane. But I get it, right? I do get it. We want to preserve these moments. We want to define ourselves to other people. It's important. I've got a 16-month-old son, and I want to capture every fleeting moment. Believe me, I want to create future keepsakes. I also want to embarrass him when he's older, right? It's a rite of passage. But at the same time, I'm conscious every time I'm behind the camera, taking pictures or filming, that I'm not experiencing something firsthand. I want to see those key milestones, his first steps, hear his first words, with my own eyes and ears. There is evidence that the right kind of stimulation can have a very positive effect on the brain. There's growing evidence that certain video games, that are often tenuously linked to bad behavior, are shown to increase dexterity and spatial awareness and quicker reasoning. Can we manipulate dopamine levels for good? Increasingly, schools are offering tablets to pupils so that they can deliver lessons in a more interactive manner. There's plenty of evidence that knowledge is better retained when it's delivered in a novel manner. Talking of which, there's that monkey again. Sorry, ape. We're still apes, right? In a way, we're still holding sticks, and we're at the dawn of a great discovery. Now we can bash our own brains in, or we can choose to use these tools to take us to the next level of evolution. So I say let's embrace the fact that we're in this moment of flux. It's my opinion that the best tech will enrich our lives and not detract from it. As our devices get smarter, they'll fade into the background. They'll free us up to focus on the things that really matter. Now, for anyone that feels jealous when they look at what other people share online, just bear in mind this quote. Don't compare your behind the scenes to other people's highlight reel. People share only the best, okay? Don't compare yourself. So next time you find yourself waiting for a train, or you're at a restaurant and your date's nipped to the loo, try and resist your urge to fish out your phone. Pause, reflect. I don't know, look at a sunset, right? Go kiss a puppy. Live in the now. Live a life story that's really worth sharing. Do I drop the mic now or? The end.